Welcome in Oklahoma Sooners fans to our first ever edition of Sooner Sunday. We're live here on YouTube, so make sure to share this. This is a new segment, a new show that we're doing on Sundays for more of a in-depth day after, since we've had a little bit more time, a little bit different than what we're going to do in the post-game shows, but very excited to get into it. Of course, if you haven't already, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And let's dive into it because the Sooners are now 3-0 and they're rolling. Honestly, they are. They're rolling and they're rolling on to what looks like it could be a very good season. And obviously, I think we all had those expectations, especially after the Michigan game. But now it keeps on feeling like it's rolling into something truly special. And again, I mean, this week it's going to be a matchup against a ranked opponent. And so, another ranked matchup. And there's, I think, at least eight, right around eight lined up right now in the SEC. That could change. Of course, you saw South Carolina lose. We're going to get into some of what happened around the SEC because it does pertain to Oklahoma. The SEC, yeah, I'm not one of these guys that's going to sit here and root for my conference unless it really benefits me. I cheer for teams that I know Oklahoma is going to have to face off against. I know that Oklahoma's going to face off against South Carolina. I know that they're going to face off against Ole Miss. So I thought Arkansas would win last night. That was my prediction. I was wrong, and I'm glad I was wrong. And I even mentioned that too, that I was hoping that Ole Miss would win because I know Oklahoma has to face Ole Miss, and I want every team to be at their very best whenever Oklahoma goes off against them. But anyways, welcome into Sooner Sundays. We're going to be doing all kinds of kind of really quick recap because we already kind of do that in our post-game shows, maybe a little bit further in depth on some of the things that we didn't get to cover on our post-game show. But then we're going to dive into our opponent for this upcoming week, looking ahead for Auburn, as you can probably see in the title. And so we're going to look ahead to our next opponent. And then some days we might, we're going to hold that off for our Tuesday show because we're bringing you guys all kinds of big-time content. Now, I am live on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and then of course post games every time that either of us can make it. And then Chad and Tierney Smith doing their show on Mondays and joining me on some of the previews on Thursdays. Guys, we're giving you a ton of content. All that we ask is that you just hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, comment down below. It really does help us more than you know. And of course, all super chats and donations will be read live on the show. This morning, I'm going to open up. First of all, if you're tuning in real quick, just let me know if early morning before church works, or if you'd rather afternoon after church, right around 1 p.m. Central Time. What time frame would you like this show better? Because we're open to rescheduling to what fits the fan base better. We want this to be a community. We want you guys to be able to jump in the live chat, give your call-ins. That link is down in the description below, also in the chat. So if you want to call in this morning, feel free to. I'm going to open that up for you guys. It's just a quick link. You can click on that and join us over here and just talk about the game, talk about the upcoming games. Would love to hear from you guys. But also, of course, let me know what time frame you like for these Sunday episodes as well. But let's dive into it. Oklahoma, they ended up having themselves I think a really solid game. It was a fun game to watch. I think they kept it entertaining. They kept it exciting enough where they ended up beating Temple 42-3. And I think that was a solid performance. When you look at it all across the board, there really wasn't anything in particular that you can really be truly upset with. I did get to go back and watch some of the sloppy plays. Stay tuned on Tuesday. I'm gonna break down some of the sloppy plays because I think there's specifics that I was seeing, and I think I might be able to break down even more if I really study it. And I really haven't gotten a chance to study it yet. So there was definitely some sloppy plays that went backwards, but that's the kind of things that you like to be able to break down after a big win. That's the kind of things that, and again, this was some guys, Brent Venables even mentioned this in his post-game press conference, was that there's some guys that they don't get to go out there and showcase their ability on the field on game day. And so that's truly special to see those guys getting out there and doing that. And you don't really learn from some of the mistakes that you would make on game day unless you get out there and you are playing on game day. And then, of course, from that learning in the film room. And so there's always things you can learn, and I would much rather be learning. And I would much rather learn from big mistakes and wins. For example, that Michigan game. If you would have told me that Oklahoma led up a 75-yard rush by Justice Haynes for a touchdown to open the third quarter, that there would be 2 turnovers for Oklahoma and none in return. Um, just those 2 stats alone, I would have told you Oklahoma lost. But no, those are huge mistakes, and Oklahoma wins and can learn from them. And then, of course, against Temple, you have a big-time win. The 3 points hurts. We talked about that yesterday on our post-game recap. It's just, that 3 points hurts because the offense turned it over. I went back and watched that Keontez Lewis targeting, and man, I don't think that should be targeting, okay? I don't think it should be. But if you're going to call targeting on R. Mason Thomas, or even the one that was reviewed on Jaden Hardy, that one on Keontez Lewis was targeting. I don't think the guy should be charged for targeting. I definitely don't think anybody should be held out of the game. There was several targeting calls. I saw, let's see, I think there was one in the South Carolina game, if memory serves me correctly. There was one in the LSU game. Man, there was some all over the country, and targeting is just atrocious. Can we just agree on that? Josh Pate, I'm calling out on you as future commissioner. You need to get your role a little quicker and fix that, because man, like that was targeting has been atrocious for quite some time now for Oklahoma, or not for Oklahoma, but for college football, and it's getting worse, especially with things like this where you have players, the Barham one for Michigan, their leading linebacker. He was out in the first half against Oklahoma because of a terrible targeting call. All of this stuff just leads up to where, again, to be kicked out of a game for not even an egregious penalty. A lot of these cases, it's not even injuring a player. A lot of these cases, you can tell by the contact, it's not intentional. It's not egregious. And we're still calling the penalty and ejecting a player for it, not just for the remainder of that game, but then now even bleeding into the next game, the way that we saw with Barham and the way that we're seeing with R. Mason Thomas. So it's just an atrocious penalty, and I'm getting more and more irritated the more I kept on watching, all these games last night and seeing all the targeting calls. Just even the questioning of targeting from the commentators is annoying enough, but then it gets called on the field. And it really is. It's getting way out of hand, and we can sit here and talk all day about it, but it doesn't really fix much for us to sit here and complain too much about it. Maybe it does. Maybe it does. Maybe they hear enough complaints where one more complaint is the one that does it in for them. But I don't think that's the case. Real quick mention for those who are regulars to the show, you can support the show and go get some merch. We've got mugs, we've got hats. There is some other designs as well. It's not just the Oklahoma VOCFB, and we want to expand on that, but we can't expand unless we get some support there. So go check it out, vocfb.com/merch. I believe that link is in the description and below as well, but if it's not, we will get that fixed. But vocfb.com/shop. Sorry, I think I said that wrong. vocfb.com/shop. That is the merchandise link if you'd like to go check it out and support the show a little bit further. But I'm going to dive into some of the PFF grades. I always think that these are interesting. And when PFF first came out, I was questioning their metrics, didn't understand why everybody referred to PFF grades. And then I dove into how they're breaking down their metrics. And I'm a nerd like this. I tried creating my own system that would create metrics. And that's whenever I started kind of recognizing how awesome their system is. And so I like looking at the PFF grades. If you don't know what PFF is, Pro Football Focus, they started, I believe they started doing a lot of just pro football, and now I've seen where they're doing college football, but I don't know if it's PFF that's doing it, but there's even the same or similar metrics that they use for all kinds of sports with baseball and basketball, and it's truly cool because you give an overall grade. And the grading system is a little bit different. You're not looking at these grading system. I think anytime you can be over a 65, you're doing all right, according to these grades. And I might have to maybe get a hold of somebody at PFF and get their opinion on that. What's the grade that you're aiming for if you're a football player? But looking down the list, first, Jake Mikula, I think giving him a shout out, I think he played really well at center and showed why Oklahoma brought him in. He had 78 snaps and was a 71.3. So that's a pretty good grade based on my interpretation of the PFF grades, especially for an offensive lineman. You're going to let up some stuff. You're going to have some things that don't go your way, and that's the other thing about PFF that I think is awesome is that we can kind of grade, and the way that they grade different linemen is not just by using the stats that we might look at on paper, because there's not a whole lot of stats for linemen. And so they really break it down. They break it down where they would have a different stat for pass blocking, a different stat for run blocking, a different stat for, it's just all different kinds of things. And so you can dive through and really look at it. But their overall grading is really cool and kind of gives you a better perspective as a fan without looking at all those deep stats and trying to combine them and get your own opinion, which I think is a good thing. And I think when you go back and look at the tape, again, that's why I think I'm giving PFF a lot of flowers here. No paid sponsorships here at all. But I just think that they do a really good job, because when I look at the tape, I recognize guys like on the offensive line, like Jake Mikula getting a 71. That makes sense because I think he played a really good game yesterday. And then John Mateer, one of the highest grades, not the highest, not even in the top three, I don't think. But a pretty good grade from him. QB John Mateer, he had 62 snaps. He had an 83.4. Very good grade. Very good. That's surprisingly good, because I know that there's some mistakes that I would look at and say, hey, here's a mistake here and there. But again, I trust PFF's grading system. And so, and I think that's overall a fair grade. Isaiah Satania, also a really good grade. And again, this is well-deserved. 45 snaps, got 85.8 grading from PFF. Jaron Kanik, man, I wish he would have gotten a bigger one, but I understand where this one's coming from, because this is also going into his run blocking and pass blocking if needed. And so he gets all those grades all combined into one. And Jaron Kanik had 38 snaps, had an 86.9. I like that a lot. And this is just the offensive players that I'm going down through right now. And going down to Torrey Blaylock. Again, this is one that surprised me, but then looking at all the blocking grades and understanding the entire breakdown, Torrey Blaylock, he had an amazing game yesterday. I loved seeing what I saw from him, and I'm going to talk about him here in just a minute. 79.3 on 31 snaps from Torrey Blaylock. Now, I put this out there on X last night because I was looking back at some of the tape, and I was also looking at some of the responses to Torrey Blaylock doing well, and I think a lot of fans are excited about Torrey Blaylock. I don't think anybody's cutting down Torrey Blaylock. I don't think anybody's overlooking Torrey Blaylock and seeing what he gives to the table or what he adds to the table, and maybe not agreeing with him being on the field. But I do see a lot of fans concerned that Jaden Ott isn't out there. And I'm not saying that no one has a right to be concerned. I'm not saying that it's invalid to be concerned that Oklahoma went out and got a big transfer running back. And I don't know the numbers on Jaden Ott and how much Oklahoma paid him, but I would assume it's probably a fair amount, especially if they were competing with teams like Georgia. So here's my honest opinion. And going down to Jaden Ott, he had a 62 on 6 snaps. Again, not a terrible PFF grade. I know that's not a good grade if you're talking academics, but that's not a terrible PFF grade. It's not a good PFF grade, but it's not a terrible one. But anyways, going back to this running back room, all that I said, and I'll bring this up real quick, because maybe I didn't word this properly. Maybe this comes across. This is why social media is not always the greatest way to get across. But I just said Oklahoma has a true running back that has earned the key running back role, and the fans are still complaining that the transfer isn't playing enough. Let's just focus on the main thing now, Sooner fans, and that's Torrey Blaylock. That's not a cut down to Jaden Ott. That's not a cut down to the fans that are upset for not seeing Jaden Ott out there. I agree with you all. I wish Jaden Ott was. I said this in the pregame show or the preview show back on Thursday. I want to see Jaden Ott out there, and I want to see him getting significant snaps, and I want to see him making something of those significant snaps. But here's the cold hard truth of it. When he is out there, we're not seeing the significant play in his snaps. And I know a lot of people are just they're jumping over to his not his run blocking, but his pass blocking. And I agree. I think that's one, but pass blocking is extremely difficult and changes per scheme. He did come in after spring ball and didn't get all spring ball to practice that. So I will give him a little bit of leeway there. And I know even Chad was bringing that up yesterday after the game. So there's some leeway that has to be given there. And I'm not saying that, we just write it off and act like, okay, all is good. I understand where fans are frustrated. My point is, instead of focusing on that frustration, the act has already been done. Sometimes you just evaluate a guy and he didn't translate over to your scheme and your system as quick as you would have hoped, because Jaden Ott was a good running back. And I don't think the injuries leading into Oklahoma are indicative of how he's performing. I think maybe the injury that he got in fall camp is indicative of how he's performing right now. But I think overall what it is that Torrey Blaylock is performing and at a higher level than I think even the coaches would have expected him to perform, and has earned that role of basically your leading back. Now over to Javonte Barnes. Javonte Barnes had a 63.7. Again, not a great grading, but not a bad grading. He was out there for 20 snaps. So Torrey Blaylock is getting the lead amount of snaps. He may not be listed as your running back one, but he's getting the most amount of snaps at that running back position. So what this tells me is that Torrey Blaylock is making the most of the small opportunity that he got back in really spring and fall to showcase his ability and showcase his mentality. And then getting on the field, he's showcasing game one. Oklahoma fans saw it. Game one, Oklahoma fans saw that he has something special. And when he was out, Oklahoma fans were concerned about Torrey Blaylock because we want that kid to play. Now, I was mentioning before the season, man, I think we've got something special in Torrey Blaylock. I didn't know it was this special, and I didn't know that he would be playing this much. I did not. I didn't imagine that a true freshman, would come in here and take over the Storm the way that Torrey Blaylock has. But man, kudos to him. Just a round of applause, because he is earning the snaps that he's taking. I don't think it's necessarily indicative of anything. I don't know how Jaden Ott's supposed to get into a rhythm when he's only given 6 total snaps in a game. And I don't have his total snaps up in front of me for the entire season, but he doesn't have a whole lot of snaps. So I don't think I can really criticize Jaden Ott for not ever getting into any sort of rhythm. I just think that the coaching staff is seeing Torrey Blaylock leading the charge there for a good reason, and he's out there and he's our leading running back, and I think we should just get behind that. What has been done with Jaden Ott is already in the past. I do think Jaden Ott comes around and shows some glimpses of what he can be and why Oklahoma got him. I think that's in the table, or that's in the cards. I think that's on the table. I think it's early in the morning, guys, so bear with me here. But I do think that Jaden Ott is going to have some sort of breakout performance at least one time this year. Just excuse me while I sip a little more coffee. Not even for my throat this morning. It's just, I don't know. I mean, I'm not used to talking this early in the morning. It's not even that early. I'm usually up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and not really tired, but just getting your brain working and then trying to remember all these things. Another running back to shout out is Xavier Robinson. He was in for significant snaps, 24 snaps yesterday for 71.7 PFF grading. I like that a lot. That is extremely awesome. I'm going to jump over to the chat, mainly because I see one guy in the chat that is really showing up. Everybody jump over to the chat real quick, because this is when my eyes are drawn over to it, and I want to see what you guys have to say. Going through here real quick, just because I think I've covered some of what Travis is saying right now. Travis says, as of right now, it appears that the money spent on Ott was a tremendous weight. But hold on a second. What if they purposely holding back? What if they are purposely holding back until SEC play? Excuse me while I'm trying to read here this morning too. Apparently that's an issue. No, I do think that that's possible. That is possible. I don't think it's the case. I just think they're holding back because here's the cold hard truth of it, guys, is that they're not going to put key playmakers, guys that they want to be competitors, guys that they want to be on the field. They're not going to put those guys out on the field if they don't absolutely have to or feel like there's some sort of major need for it. Okay, I really just think they're going to hold back as often as they can because of the injury problems that we saw a season ago. So with that being said, Jaden Ott is still forming some sort of, he's got that shoulder injury that he had, and it was a pretty, I mean, not severe, but it was more than just a minor injury in fall camp. So we do have to recognize that much, and just understand that they are holding him back a little bit because of the injuries that he's endured in the past. Now, does that give him an excuse? No. And does that mean that Oklahoma was right to get him in from the transfer portal and pay him all kinds of money? No. Maybe the money does go to waste, but if the money went to waste for you to find out that the competitive nature came out in another back, I think we can offset it with saying, hey, it didn't work out for Jaden Ott, but I'm glad that Tory Blaylock stepped up. I'm glad that Tory Blaylock all of a sudden came up here and stepped into the role that we weren't getting out of the transfer. So I'm not cutting down Jaden Ott. I think he is going to show up sometime this season. I think it's going to be just fine. I think some of this is overreaction, as I saw from some commenters on my post. Some of these fans are just they're whiny. Some of the fans are maybe I'll say ignorant. And I think that's true of all of us. You know what? If we're not a whiny fan base, we're not expecting to win, right? So I'm okay with us being a whiny fan base at times, but maybe not going over the top. But if you're not complaining about something, your expectations aren't high enough. So I'm okay with it. Honestly, it's a good thing to be able to sit here and criticize the fan base a little bit, and that's I really believe that. So that's okay. Have your complaints, have your concerns about the team for sure. 1982 Boomer Sooner says eventually BV Coach Bates will get a fumble recovery or an interception right. I brought this up yesterday. You know who comes into town? You know who comes into town this Saturday? I think we're all very familiar with what he's capable of doing. At least what he did against Oklahoma, to hurt Oklahoma. So why wouldn't it be the other way around? I'm just saying, Jackson Arnold did have a lot of turnovers against this Brent Venables defense in practice a season ago. He also had a lot of fumbles and not even a lot of interceptions, but he definitely did fumble the ball a lot. A season ago for the Sooners. So let's hope that maybe that comes to fruition. Yeah, and you know what? We were actually talking about this too, 1982 Boomer Sooner. We were talking about this a little yesterday. Would you rather a defense that was allowing 15 to 20 points a game, but they're getting turnovers, they're getting 2 or 3 turnovers, or not even that, but let's say, would you rather maybe a defense from last year, a defense that you saw last year that got quite a few turnovers, but the offense was also turning it over a ton? I guess we do have an offense that's turning it over way too much, but at least the offense responds. When the defense responds, the offense recognizes it, appreciates it, and responds back. So, that's a good thing. So at the very least, at least if we're not getting the turnovers, we're getting 3 and outs a lot. I think there was 7 3 and outs yesterday. I will count that in my book. I will count that as a turnover because you got their offense off the field fast, put it back in your offense's hands, and allowed them to do something. So there's kind of a little bit of an upside. At least the defense is doing tremendous on everything else and getting offenses off the field. It's not a turnover, but we can kind of look at it similar to a turnover. You feel me? I think that's a good point there. Travis says, good point, but we did recruit a player who didn't perform exceptionally well in 2024. I guess those who recruited him had to see something in Ott. Okay, we did see. Who are you referring to there? I'm kind of questioning that. I guess my brain's not operating fast enough to keep up with you there, Travis. I'll jump over to Jonathan. He says, do you think Ott regrets coming to OU? Can't be good for his draft stock. No, I don't think he regrets coming to OU. I just think that things aren't going in his favor. I really do. I think, like I said, I think that he's going to figure things out. I think he's going to come across and he's going to find a way to get going. It's just not happening right now, and that's okay. We can wait. We can wait. I mean, so and honestly, Chad brought this up yesterday, right after the game. He said, I believe it was Rodney Anderson. He didn't have a big game, like a big significant game until Texas. So you're looking 5 or 6 games into the season before a big time running back that is now kind of a legend. I mean, I would consider Rodney Anderson a legend. And I think there's plenty of other running backs we could probably look at as an example of that too, where they didn't really get going early in the season, and all of a sudden they finally had that breakout. Ramondre Stevenson, right? Am I adding an R in there? But Ramondre Stevenson, he was one of those guys. So I forget what it was, but he wasn't playing for the first several games, and when he first came in, it was like a big statement. I know that's different, but there was like a lack in the running back room. That was back in the year that we had Jalen Hurts. So what was that, 2019? And Ramondre Stevenson came in and was just like, bam, an answer to the prayers that we needed in that running back room. I felt like the running back room was not bad. It was just, it had to be picked up by Jalen Hurts until that moment when Ramondre Stevenson came on the field and took over for that role. Which could be the case for Jaden Ott. I'm not saying it will be. Maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, I think it's too big of a talent. And like the fans are saying, why would we have gotten him if he's not going to contribute? I believe in Jaden Ott. I believe in this coaching staff, especially from what they've done from a season ago. This looks like a totally different team, guys. So even if Jaden Ott doesn't work out at Oklahoma, you know what? I'm glad that he at least added that depth to the room, because I do think that there's something that we still get out of that. If not on the football field, you get it out of the competition in the room for sure. Going back to 1982, Boomer Sooner, he says, in critical situations also with those fumbles. Yeah, critical situations. I mean, going back to that Missouri game, Oklahoma wins that game so easily if you just don't turn the ball over and turn it over at critical times. That South Carolina game, that's not on Jackson Arnold, but that was one. So maybe this is a moot point because we're talking about Jackson Arnold here in this situation. But that one, I think if you don't have 3 turnovers, you might win that South Carolina game. But what's another one? Tennessee was absolutely one. Oklahoma might not have beaten Tennessee last year, okay? Because Tennessee looked good last year, all right? And Oklahoma might not have won that game, but it's a question mark because of the turnovers, when the turnovers happened. Again, critical moments when you're across midfield in at least field goal range, and one time within the 5-yard line where you should have scored a touchdown and you turn it over in one play right after the defense got it back. So yeah, I think, man, I'm glad that we don't have those situations. Oklahoma's not turning it over at critical points, and I think that's a really good point that you made there, 1982 Boomer Sooner, because Oklahoma's turning over the ball this year, and it sucks to see, but they're responding, and it's also not critical timing. They are giving up 3 points when they're doing it in their own end zone. Yeah, that is a good point to throw in there. One more by Travis. He says, I think the beginning of SEC play will be the determining factor. He either pulls the trigger or he doesn't. Yeah. And I think that's going to be the determining factor for a lot of things for this team. I think this team is either going to pop. And I think you have to answer really loud here in Norman this week. And you have to have a similar, yet I honestly think a louder performance against Auburn. I don't think, man, how do I say this? Because I don't want to get clipped, and I know somebody that would clip me saying this. I'm just going to say it the way that I'm thinking it. I don't think Auburn is as big or as tough or as great of an opponent as Michigan. At this point in the season, I don't see it. And I'll dive into it because going back to what Travis asked earlier on, way back, is what's your prediction with the upcoming game against Auburn? I will give my official prediction on Thursday. So stay tuned on Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time is when I'll go live for that one. So yeah, I'll give my official prediction. I do feel really good about Oklahoma winning, and here's the reason why. We'll go over real quick just to recap a little bit again, real quick from what happened against Temple. Oklahoma had 29 first downs, only allowed 7. Had 228 rushing yards, only allowed 26. Man, can you imagine? Man, I don't know. I mean, I'm at a loss for words. I think these are some really good stats. I don't care that it was Temple. Let's not forget the Temple was hanging points. They were hanging 40 plus points and only allowing 8.5 points per game coming into this game. So I know it was against nobody, but you're handling business against a team the way that you should. And again, you're controlling the game. You're doing what you need to do to win against an opponent, especially with all that hype and all that buildup. You can overlook an opponent. And I think that's what you saw from Auburn. They might be looking ahead too much, and that's why they only won by 16 against South Alabama. But anyways, 287 passing yards, only allowed 78 against Temple. Great stats there. Like I said, I would like to see Oklahoma keep them under 140 passing yards, under 100 rushing yards. They way outperformed my maybe too lenient expectations. And now I say that with confidence, definitely too lenient. Let's see here. 515 total yards compared to 104 for them. That defense was outstanding. And anytime we can hang over 500 yards, I'm going to be just fine with that. And then third down efficiency. This is one where I think Oklahoma could improve a little bit. I'd like to be over 50%, although I think anytime you're over 40, 45%, you're doing just fine. Oklahoma was 6 for 13, and they allowed only 3 third down conversions on 16 attempts. So just outstanding there. Absolutely outstanding. And I know I saw 7 3-and-outs. I'm not seeing the stat sheet that I was getting yesterday, but I know I saw 7 3-and-outs, and it was truly a performance from that defense that I think just showed that they're not overlooking an opponent, and you didn't even have your top guys in there all the time. I went through PFF grades for the offense. Let me go through the defense real quick. Starting off with Marvin Jones Jr. I think he had a really good game, and I mentioned that yesterday. He had 37 snaps for 75.8 PFF grading. Devon Jordan, I liked to see him out there. He had 30 snaps, 70 and a half grade, PFF grade. 72.6 for David Stone on 28 snaps. There's a lot of other good grades in here. I'm not going to throw them all out there, but Grayson Halton, 74.6. I'm throwing out those very high ones. So Grayson Halton on 26 snaps, 74.6 PFF grading. Kip Lewis, 23 snaps for a 73.6. And then Peyton Bowen, 22 snaps, 71.2. That was another guy that we talked about yesterday that, hey, he's probably not getting a whole bunch of, his name called a whole bunch, but he's looking really good. Sammy Omosigo, almost the team leader. I'm going to say the team leader with 20 or more snaps because he has 21 snaps. 89.7. That is a phenomenal PFF grading. And so love to see that from the linebacker. Switching over to linebacker too. He can play that edge. He can play that. Honestly, I think he can play either Mike or Will. He just does really good in that Will. And that showed yesterday a lot. 89.7 though for Sammy. I like to see that a lot. And going to Owen Heineke, he had 20 snaps for 83.4 grading. And then the team high, even though it was only four snaps, 90.1 for Wyatt Gilmore, the outside linebacker. You had Wyatt Gilmore get back there. I believe he had his first career sack too. So I'm pretty sure I got that correct. And so hats off to Wyatt Gilmore. Love to see him out there. And then a few snaps from Nigel Smith too. There was quite a few guys. Trent Wilson, Omarion Robinson. We got to see him out there. Who's some other guys? Marcus Strong. We got to see him out there quite a bit. Some guys that we don't get to see out on the field a whole lot. So I liked seeing that. Jaden Hardy had a pretty good game overall. I know he had some hiccups, but he had a solid game. And I think the first game that he really got some meaningful snaps too, with 25 total snaps. So happy to see him out there. Jacoby Johnson Also, we didn't get to see a whole lot of him from this season. At least his name wasn't called. I should go back and look at that. And then I think I mentioned Devon Jordan, getting to see him out there. So a lot of names that we didn't get to see a whole lot from throughout the season so far. But let's go ahead and look ahead to Auburn. Yesterday, Auburn ended up winning 31-15, a 16-point victory over Alabama State. And I think Alabama fans would agree, sorry, not Alabama, Auburn fans would agree that over Alabama State, they should be winning by more than 16. But you handled business, you controlled the game, and you got out of there with a win. So maybe it's not, and again, I think that it's possible that they were overlooking their opponent, something that Oklahoma could have very well done, but they didn't. And I think that's what separates good teams from great teams, is not overlooking your opponent, recognizing that any opponent can beat you, and especially for Alabama State, who is an in-state rival, not really a rival, but excuse me, they look at Auburn as a rival. Excuse me, again, I'm taking kind of a longer sip. That one was still hot, and I'm not sure why, but yeah. So I think Alabama State wants to beat Auburn more than I think Alabama wants to beat Auburn sometimes. So I think there's something there, and for Auburn, you have to recognize that, and you have to recognize we have to be on top of our A game, and we also want to piece together a game that we can find a lot of good things going into that Oklahoma game. And I think that's how Oklahoma treated this Temple game. Hey, let's try some things. Let's find out some things that we can use going into a big matchup against Auburn. And for Auburn, it should have been let's try to find things that we can use in a big big matchup against Oklahoma, and going on the road to Oklahoma. So you're going to be in Norman, so it's going to be tougher than it was last year. And Auburn has to recognize, I do think Auburn is better than last year. I don't think they're as much better from last year and made such a jump as Oklahoma did from last year. So that's something that I look at. Jackson Arnold, this is the return of Jackson Arnold. I'm looking forward to it. I've always been the Jackson Arnold supporter, and I get ridiculed for that left and right. I don't agree ever with just cutting a college football player down completely, especially when they face such adversity the way that he had to go through last year. Although all of that stops. All of that stops this week, because look how garbage Jackson Arnold is. That's what we're going to lead into this week. Look how garbage he was. 13 for 24, and I'm being satirical. I hope the best for the kid, but I hope he goes 17% completion percentage this week and has 18 turnovers. I mean, if I'm being totally honest, I don't want him to succeed against Oklahoma. I hope he does well outside of that, though. I have no reason to hate the guy. So, anyways, he went 13 to 24, 142 yards, 1 touchdown through the air against Alabama State. And again, an opponent that they probably should have done better. So he had 54%. I can't say a whole lot because John Mateer didn't have a great outing and completion percentage against Temple. So there's something to be said there. Anyways, he also did pretty well on the ground when he needed to. 5 yards a carry with 10 carries, 50 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground for Jackson Arnold. So there's something there. He is a dual threat, and Hugh Freeze is leaning into that a lot this season. And I'll get to his overall stats here in just a moment, because his overall career stats, not career stats, but his season stats so far, 77.8% completion on 45 attempts. So he hasn't been throwing the ball a whole lot. He hasn't been letting it loose, but he's been consistent and careful with the ball. And I've always thought that Jackson is a pretty good thrower. He didn't get to showcase that too much at Oklahoma, but he is a very good passer, and it's showing a little bit when he gets those glimmers there at Auburn. He has 359 total yards, 3 touchdowns through the air, no interceptions, which I wouldn't expect him to throw too many interceptions. He didn't throw that many interceptions at Oklahoma outside of the Arizona game and the bowl game. He really didn't. And so you have to understand that he is going to be able to throw the ball pretty well. He's got a very good receiving core around him, and then Eric Singleton adds to that, being able to hit him, and then you've got Cam Coleman. I think he's he has the capability to be one of the top wide receivers. He's not showcasing it as much. But again, Auburn hasn't had to showcase it as much. They might try to use that, and it might be a good thing for them that they haven't showcased it enough. Although I think Oklahoma is going to be smart enough to make sure to shut that down. But anyways, their running defense doesn't look horrible when I watch it on tape, but stats kind of say a little bit different things. So here's Auburn against Oklahoma. Let's compare these stats. All right, let's just look at it. And I think overall, so Auburn has played Baylor, worthy opponent. Not we'll get to that. So they've played Baylor, they've played Ball State, and they've played Alabama State. Oklahoma played Illinois State, and then Michigan, and then Temple. I think Oklahoma's had the tougher runaround, obviously with Michigan. I think that's what sets Oklahoma apart, is that they played Michigan, and they played Michigan very well. Again, one mistake away from being able to keep Michigan under 100 yards rushing, and that's not taking away from Michigan. I know it's a moot point. It's a stupid point to make. I get that, but I am just saying that they were only one mistake away from being able to do something incredible in that game. And so fixing those mistakes obviously is something that you're working on every week. But Auburn so far throughout the season, they've allowed 37 points per game while allowing 14. Oklahoma's scored 33.7 while only allowing 6.3. That's very comparable, but then again, you look at the opponents, and I think Oklahoma leads. Through 3 games, Auburn has scored 111 points while allowing 42, where Oklahoma has scored 101, only 10 points less, while only allowing 19 total points being scored on the season so far. I like that. I mean, I like that. I like that a lot. Let's move on. What's some important stats here that we could look at here? Rushing yards per attempt. They're rushing. So this is where I say I do think that their running defense is working pretty well. Maybe not the total yards, but I think the yards per attempt looks pretty good. So they're rushing for about almost 6 yards per carry, 5.8, where Oklahoma is rushing for about 4.1. So not great, but then a lot of that is coming from John Mateer as well. So that's, again, something that's a little bit of a concern for Oklahoma, where Auburn's defense is only allowing 2 yards per carry on defense. They're only allowing that much against their opponents. Oklahoma's got to step it up from there. If they're going to get past their defense and be a dual threat at all, they've got to be able to do that. Now, for Oklahoma, let's see here. Kind of diving through here because I didn't really highlight a lot of these. I was going to try to dive into a lot of these, but I'm looking past a lot of these stats. I think some of these just aren't really important stats. I'm trying to find red zone percentage. So wow, okay, I didn't realize that they were this good, but Auburn right now is 100% in the red zone. I have not looked at Oklahoma's, but I would assume yes. So they are 100% as well. Okay, so Auburn 9 for 9, Oklahoma 13 for 13, where their opponents 75%, 4 for 4 out of 3 scores. So I mean, yeah, they're 3 for 4. But again, that's where Oklahoma's opponents are only scoring in the red zone by field goals, really, and then so Auburn's is 7 for 10. Yeah. So, anyways, looking at the red zone percentage, 100%. That's impeccable for both teams. I didn't realize Oklahoma was on 100%, but it makes sense. I'm looking at this, and I wanted to look at overall turnovers as well, and it looks like kind of interceptions. Okay, I'm not seeing it there. Let's just move on from that. Oklahoma versus Auburn. When I look at the stats and I'm looking at them again, it's because I know that on paper it feels like Oklahoma should just run this. And I'll jump over to Travis's prediction here. He says Oklahoma 41, Auburn 14. On paper, I don't see how that couldn't happen. On paper, and recognizing the way that Oklahoma fans feel about Jackson Arnold, he could turn the ball over a bunch. So, I think that that's not a crazy a crazy stat to throw out there when you're talking about Arnold coming back to Norman, all the emotions. And I know he said, "Oh, I'm not on social media. I'm not paying attention to any of that noise." There's still a noise within your head, even if you were not listening to anything. And then, of course, the media keeps on reminding you every time that you're in a press conference. There's noise in his head for sure. And so I do want to mention that. Man, I think that Oklahoma wins this ball game, and I do think it's probably by double digits. I feel very similar to how I felt against Michigan, but I think Auburn's defense to me does not seem as tough as Auburn's or as Michigan's defense. So, if here's the thing. This game, what is this game too? I need to look at that. What is the time? It's a 2:30 kickoff. That's what I thought it was. 2:30 kickoff. So it's not an 11 a.m. kickoff. You have plenty of time to show up. It's not the nighttime feel, but it's still considered prime time, SEC prime time anyways. So we this is another game where we need Oklahoma fans to be as rowdy, and in my opinion, rowdier than they were against Michigan. I think as the season goes on, every big game needs to be louder. Every big game needs to be rowdier in that stadium. Now, I might be a hypocrite because I'm too much of an analyst with football where I have a hard time getting loud because it distracts me from watching the game. But I do try to at least be clapping. I try to be at least be making some sort of noise. And I expect every fan to at least give that much effort because I know there's a lot of fans that don't give that much effort. So, I understand that maybe I'm a hypocrite. I'm not sitting there screaming on every play. I yell pretty loud whenever, it's a big play, like, oh man, we need to get off the field here. This is crucial. And I definitely screamed quite a bit during that Michigan game, but most of the time I'm just too much. My brain is watching the game so closely that I don't have enough attention span to be sitting there doing both. But that's no excuse because that just means that I had more to build upon and I can get louder. And I need the fans to get louder every week for bigger games, and this is absolutely one of them. So, I mean, I think Oklahoma can win this one. Do I think they hang? I think they can hang 30 points, 35 points. I don't know if they're going to get into the 40s against Auburn. I think they can hang 35 points. Now it's just up to how tough is this defense? How good is this secondary? Because I think Auburn wants to test Oklahoma's secondary. I think Auburn wants to get that ground game going. They can run the ball really well. And I think they can pass the ball better than Michigan could. Now, the confidence level is one that I'm kind of questioning. Can you get back there and disrupt Jackson Arnold enough to get him to have happy feet and cause some turnovers? That's what Oklahoma knows that they can do against Jackson Arnold. This is where Jackson Arnold coming in and facing Oklahoma's defense and him knowing Oklahoma's defense because he practiced against him, that doesn't do him nearly as much good as Oklahoma's defense knowing Jackson Arnold, because anybody that knows Brent Venables and the way that he runs this defense, they are never going to show the same look 2 weeks in a row, let alone the stuff that he saw last year compared to this year. So I am extremely interested for this game. Stay tuned this week because I've got some big guests coming on. I know I was talking to Jake Crane. Him and I want to link up and do some content with each other this week. So Jake Crane, my guy, we're gonna do some stuff this week, and then I'm sure I'll have some other guys on as well from Auburn. I want to get their opinions, and the guys that I'm thinking of too. They're high on Auburn. There's one that I can think of that, man, he is like the biggest homer. He tells me every year, every year since I've known him, anyways. Auburn's good this year, man, and the other guy, Blake Lane, who you guys probably know here at the Voice of College Football. He's been on our channel a couple of times already. Blake's a good friend of mine, and he feels pretty good about it, but I think he's honest with it. He feels good, but it's not like he's coming in here just thinking that, Auburn's going to smoke this game. But I wanted to jump to some things around the country. Let's recap some things that happened in the SEC yesterday, and I'll pull this up because I didn't put it in my notes. Just felt like it was a lot easier for me to look at it. So LSU struggled against Florida. If you want my honest opinion, they won and they did good. I don't think they did a bad job or anything, But my honest opinion, I think they struggled against Florida, considering that DJ Lagway threw 5 interceptions. Let me rewind a second. DJ Lagway was coming in, and I put him up at the top. There was a lot of other people, a lot of media people that put Lagway at the top of not just the SEC, but at the top of the nation as a Heisman favorite. And let me read this stat again. He threw 5 interceptions in one single game against LSU, who's not really known for their defense here in the last few years. Their defense has improved a lot, I will say that. And I think LSU's defense looked great last night. I don't think that that they did as great. Yeah, and I wonder how LSU did as I was watching other games. Yeah, I don't think they did great. I think their offense could have done better. But I will. I mean, I don't know. I can't really criticize them because they still covered the spread. I believe the spread at one point was like 8.5. They still covered that. They won. They won the game. And Florida's no walkover team, and it's a rivalry. There's some emotions built up there. So maybe I'm being too critical. 322 total yards for their offense. They did have a turnover, 10 first downs, where this is what's kind of crazy to me is that Florida outgained them. 366 total yards, 23 first downs. It was just an interesting game. When I was watching that one last night, I was like, man, how on earth does DJ Lagway look this bad? This bad. I mean, 5 turnovers. I think, Florida had the ball a lot. They kept on showing a lot of glimmers of hope. And they blew it. I think Florida beat themselves more than LSU won. That's the wrong way to say that. LSU didn't perform bad. It's just they didn't perform at the higher level that I would have expected. But then again, this is a big-time rivalry. I get it. And so emotions flowing. Overall, LSU still top team in the SEC right now. I think like top 2, top 3 at least. So I can go through and kind of make I think Georgia is number 1 in the SEC. Maybe in the country, although I think Oregon is kind of showcasing that number 1 for me. But anyways, LSU, they did well. They performed well. It was a big game. Florida's not a walkover team or anything like that. And I also think Florida, while they aren't looking good because they're losing games like USF, they're still a good team. They're just shooting themselves in the foot. If they didn't have 5 turnovers, do they win that game? I think so. So kudos to LSU. I'm not trying to take down LSU or anything. Georgia, Tennessee, that was a phenomenal game. If you didn't get to watch that one, I was actually heading back home in the middle of the fourth quarter of that one. And when I got home, man, that was chaos. Get down there, tie it up, go into overtime, end up winning it in overtime for Georgia. They ended up winning 44-41. Tennessee is the one that I take from that game. Tennessee looks really good. Now, they made some key mistakes, and I think even Kirby Smart was kind of talking a little bit about this. Tennessee made some key mistakes that kept them from winning that game. I will say, by looking around at the conference, man, this looks like the Big 12 back when Oklahoma was, had Lincoln Riley at the helm. I mean, this looks like some Big 12 scores. No kidding. 38-14, 44-41, 41-40. 31-7. These are some Big 12 scores. So very interesting. All right. So jumping on. So Georgia, Tennessee. Georgia, I think, is the best in the SEC. They've proven me wrong enough to say that, hey, they are good enough to win whatever game they want, however they want, and they can overcome mistakes. It's Kirby Smart, and I never, like I said, I'm not going to be surprised by anything Kirby Smart does on that football field. Never going to be surprised. Texas was a little bit of a shock. Texas looks like garbage, if I'm being totally honest, and they could fix things. I don't think it's too late for Texas to turn things around. They can fix things, and they probably will have a lot of things worked out, but Arch Manning does not look good. Arch Manning, man, looks really rough. And you look at that game yesterday, 11 of 25, didn't even shoot 50%, didn't even throw 50%, 114 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He just didn't look good at all. His leading receiver had 32 rushing yards, and Ryan Wingo, you got to get that guy the ball more than 3 times. So Texas just did not look good. How many times are they going to get into 1st and goal and not get into the end zone? That's a good sign that Oklahoma is feeling good about that game. I can tell you that much for sure. But anyways, moving on here. Let's see. Going back to SL Walling here real quick. I think we'll be 6-0 after Red River rivalry after watching Texas play week 1 and this week. Week 1, I didn't really have a whole lot of negatives to take away from week 1 because I thought this could be 2 really good teams, but I wasn't on the same boat as everyone else in the media where they were just like, "Oh man, this is like 2 top teams." I didn't see that. I saw, man, this is 2 teams that should be top teams that kind of look sloppy. And from Ohio State, still, the more I see out of them, I'm kind of feeling like that's the case. I agree with you, though. I'm feeling really good going into that Red River rivalry, that Red River shootout, however you want to call it. I'm okay with Red River shootout. I like that name. I've just always called it the Red River rivalry, RRR. I think it's a tongue twister. It's fun to say. So I'm not trying to be politically correct when I say that. Going over to Texas A&M, they pulled out the win. Surprising win for them, going up to South Bend. 41-40. That is insane. I would have hit the under in that game. I don't know what it was sitting at. I might be able to pull that up. I would have probably hit the under in that game. It shows 49.5. It would have been right around there. I wouldn't have touched it, and I obviously didn't touch it, but I would have thought that would have been a lower scoring game, like a 24-17 kind of game, maybe 21-17 kind of game. That's insane. Again, this is SEC teams looking like they've got Big 12 defenses, and Oklahoma doesn't. Oklahoma's not showing that at all. Anyways, Texas A&M, kudos to them. They're looking good. That's good for the conference, so good for them. Vanderbilt, you have to imagine they're ranked today. Vanderbilt, 31-7 over South Carolina. Now, I did see Lenora Sellers got injured fairly early in that game. I don't remember when it was that he got injured. But without him, South Carolina, they don't have enough weapons around him. South Carolina did not look good, but Vandy looked pretty good. I'm gonna say that. I mean, I don't want to admit it, but Vandy looked pretty good. So that's interesting. Ole Miss won 41-35 over Arkansas. That was a battle down to the last minute, really. And Arkansas just so here's where special teams comes into play. You have to be good on all 3 sides of the ball. Special teams is incredibly important. They missed 2 field goals. They lost by 6. You had 6 points that weren't hung on that board, and you lost by 6. You've got to hit those. That is crucial. Also, huge prayers out to Kenai Walker. I know we kind of gave him a rough time here at Oklahoma and a hard time for some of his coverages, but I still respect any player out there on the field that gives it their all for Oklahoma. And so Kenai Walker, prayers out to you. I don't know what the status is on him, but I know he was taken off on a stretcher. So I really hope he's okay. And I never wish ill on anyone. I don't care what the circumstance is. But Ole Miss winning, that was good for Oklahoma. You kind of want that because you want your opponents to look good. Alabama looked really good against Wisconsin. I think they're looking back into the form that they should look. Ty Simpson went 24-29, 382 yards, 4 touchdowns. And then their running game, though, wow, I didn't even see this when I was looking at the box score yesterday. I wasn't even paying attention to their running game. Holy cow. They don't have a rusher, a traditional rusher over 20 yards. Ty Simpson led their rushing. They didn't run the ball very often either. But Ty Simpson led their team in rushing for 25 yards. That's kind of pathetic. I don't know what's going on there, Alabama. I didn't even notice that when I was looking at it yesterday. So I don't know how that didn't stand off the paper. But anyways, they won pretty comfortably over Wisconsin, 38-14. Again, a decent opponent. I don't think Wisconsin's good this year, but that's a decent opponent. You can't write them off. You can't say that that's bad. We already talked about Auburn, South Alabama. They won by 16. Missouri handled business against Louisiana, 52-10. I'm not sure what I said on that game, but I felt like I felt like I was going Missouri. I mean, Missouri looks better than I thought they would. I'll be totally honest. Man, I'm being honest right now. I'm a little nervous about how I don't think Oklahoma's going to fare up poorly against any team in the conference, but I'm nervous about that game. I think that's one where the two teams match up pretty well because their offense is probably one of the best in the conference. And I know that they haven't really faced a whole lot of tough defenses yet, so it's hard to say that. Maybe once they get into SEC play, they take a step back, which would be normal for Missouri. Mississippi State, shout out to them, man. They're starting off this season already 3-0, and they're dominating teams that they should be dominating, 63-0 over Alcorn State, and especially after a big win over Arizona State a week ago. This was kind of a trap game for them. So really, really proud of that team from turning things around, looking good over there. And then Kentucky, worst team in the conference right now. They won 48-23 over Eastern Michigan. Good job for them, but that's pretty much all that we saw from around the league. For Oklahoma's opponents, I'm sure you guys saw them showing this up on the broadcast nonstop yesterday, but Oklahoma's got 8 opponents left on the schedule, so there would have been 9 total opponents if you include Michigan that are ranked at the time of playing them, possibly. I don't know, because there's some of those teams, I think, not Missouri, South Carolina could drop off, especially if they don't have Lenore Sellers, who's another team that could drop off. Alabama could drop off. I don't know what their road looks like before Oklahoma, so they could drop off, but maybe they're right back on the right track. There's a couple others that could drop off. Auburn's a ranked matchup when we go against them. Texas will be a ranked matchup whenever we go against them, most likely, unless something atrocious happens there. Ole Miss, probably going to be a ranked matchup. I mean, there's a lot of potential ranked matchups when we face them. So it's scary, but it's also exciting. It's really exciting because Oklahoma doesn't get that in the Big 12. Oklahoma hasn't gotten that in the Big 12. So very excited to see how all this plays out. The SEC's looking just top to bottom difficult. I'm not going to say dominant because there's a lot of teams that maybe don't look. Missouri or Mississippi State, for example. I think Oklahoma would whoop Mississippi State, but they look good. So it's like I think they would, but Mississippi State might hang in there with an Oklahoma, and I think time will tell. We don't have to face them this year, so no worries there. But I am interested in seeing how they fare out. Kentucky could bounce back. I don't think they're anything. They're going to be the worst in the SEC this year, based on how I'm seeing them. Man, I mean, Missouri looks better than I thought they would. Georgia looks better than I was thinking they would, although I didn't expect Georgia to look bad. Tennessee looks better than I thought they would. So it's just a conference that could end up eating itself inside out. And going over to Clement real quick, I see him jumping in the chat. He says, Alabama have Georgia in 2 weeks. They have LSU before playing us. Okay, so I didn't know that they had LSU before Oklahoma, so I thought that was after. So glad you brought that up. Yes, I mean, they very well could be out of the top 25 when we face off against Alabama. And then he also says Tennessee will be a hard game in Knoxville. Absolutely. And it'll be how does the defense stop that offense? That's the biggest thing there. As long as Oklahoma's defense can keep on looking as good as they do, stop the downfield threat, because Joey Aguilar just launches that ball up in the air, and their receivers are good. They come down with it. Braswell had a couple of really good catches yesterday that I was watching. I don't recall their other receivers' names, but I'll dive into them for sure. And it's going to be an interesting one for sure. SL Walling, I believe that's Stacy, right? I think I heard Chad and Tierney calling your name out. But Tennessee is going to be one of the hardest games this year. I think Georgia and Tennessee will meet again in the playoffs. Possible. I don't know. I really don't know who in the SEC can make the playoffs this year, just because there's so many options now. I'm not sure who I would pick. Right now, I feel really good about Oklahoma's chances. Georgia, I feel good about their chances. I don't feel as good about Texas. Don't feel as good about Alabama. I think Missouri has a good chance. I've looked at Missouri's schedule, and I think they have a good chance. LSU. Those are probably my 4 to make it. Tennessee's right on the verge, so maybe you get Tennessee. Maybe South Carolina bounces back. Maybe Vanderbilt just keeps on winning, and they're actually a good program. Who knows? But it's definitely a conference that could eat itself. Kind of like that snake that eats himself. He ends up getting to the point where it's yeah. I mean, it's a weird conference this year, and again, like I said, it looks like a Big 12 scoring conference, which is just so awkward. But guys, I want you guys to throw it not just in the chat, but throw it in the comments for me. What time you would like this day after show to be? So for our Sooner Sundays, would you like that to be at 8 o'clock or 1 p.m., or would you like a nighttime show, maybe like a 9 o'clock broadcast where it's after when we're all winding down at the end of the day? For some of us, 9 o'clock is pretty late. Let me know what you think. And then, of course, if you want to support the channel a little bit further, scan that QR code on the right side, bottom right-hand side of the screen for you to become a member today. Otherwise, that link is in the description down below. Become a member today for as low as $2.99 a month just to support the channel a little bit further. And then, of course, go to vocfb.com/shop if you want to find our merchandise, such as the hat that I'm wearing today, also the mug. Got a few of our things from the merch store. And so if you want to support the channel a little bit further, those are the best ways to do it. Of course, free, easy, simple way. Just comment, not just in the live chat, but comment down below. Hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe. We appreciate everybody so much for tuning in. Make sure to tune in again on Mondays with Sooner Smiths at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Tuesdays with myself, Oklahoma Sooners Live on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time for our preview. And then again on Saturdays for the post game. As soon as the game wraps up, we'll try to hop on as quick as we can. And then Sundays for our Sooner Sundays. But appreciate everybody so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. Boomer.